Yeah, or something. This is a bad video. Well, hi there guys, and welcome to another video. So guys, today I fancied having a bit of a piss and moan, a bit of a rant, because I do enjoy that very much. And today I'm going to be talking about cryptocurrency proof of work mining algorithms and some unforeseen consequences as a result of them. So it's not going to be a particularly interesting topic, but I'm going to enjoy myself, and that's really all that matters. So a bit of background. Cryptocurrency. A cryptocurrency kind of needs four things basically to operate. It needs a way to mint the coin, a way for the currency to come into existence. It's a decentralized thing, so there's no central issuer of it. It needs a peer-to-peer network for people to broadcast their transactions onto, for people to send and receive the coin. A peer-to-peer network, decentralized, that anyone can be a part of. It needs some people on that network to process these transactions that people are doing, and it needs a mechanism of consensus so that everyone on the network can agree about the properness of those transactions. Easy enough. So to put a bit of background, what is proof of work for those of you who might not be familiar with the algorithm? So what does proof of work give us to start with? It lets us randomly pick from mining participants on the network as to who is going to process the next group of transactions. And it gives those mining participants who successfully do participate in doing so a reward for that by means of minting these coins and adding them to the network, in addition to the reward offered by anyone sending coins, the fee. But how does that work then? So proof of work involves an algorithm whereby those people participating in mining will be sifting through random numbers. So they'll be generating random numbers quickly as they can and running those random numbers through an algorithm to see if they meet a certain criteria. That's a proof of work algorithm, that criteria. So it's generally a computationally complex throwaway task done many times a second, with a view that you throw these random numbers into it until you find one of those random numbers. And when you found one of those random numbers, you're eligible to process the next group of transactions ready to go on the network. So, seems sensible enough. It relies on the algorithm making it difficult to find one of these magic numbers, but easy to validate that the magic number that you found is indeed legit, and matches the criteria. So why is proof of work as a mechanism successful in doing this on these networks? Well, because it gives a reward by means of the coin base, which is the thing that mints the coin onto the network, causing it to come into existence, and the transaction fees. It makes people want to be a part of it. So that's good. That's healthy for the network. People processing transactions, and of course, because anyone can do it, in principle, lots of people will be doing it, and so no one entity will be able to subvert that process of transaction processing. So it can be seen to be trustworthy, and so on and so forth. So in principle, it seems like a great idea, and there are balances in place as well. So most of these algorithms are designed in such a way that the more people who there are on the network mining, i.e. the more of these numbers being checked per second, then the more difficult it is to find one of these random numbers. So effectively, if the network is processing, a million numbers a second, then it'll be 1,000 times easier than if the network is processing 1 billion numbers a second. It doesn't work exactly like that, but that's roughly how it is. So more miners means more difficult to find a number. So effectively that keeps the rate of transaction processing pretty consistent over time. It happens at a predictable frequency. So coins are being minted and added to the network at a predictable rate, and transactions are being processed at a predictable rate. And as miners come on, it's more difficult. As miners leave, it becomes easier again. So yeah. And some coins like Bitcoin reduce the value of the minted coins, the Coinbase transaction, over time as a built-in part of the evolution of the network. So in principle, that means that at some point, assuming the value of the coins were to stay the same, the number of miners would halve. And why are there unforeseen consequences then? Well, let's talk about Bitcoin, since we're on the topic of Bitcoin. So the algorithm that Bitcoin chose to run these random numbers through is something called SHA-256, and they do 2 rounds of SHA-256 on random numbers. SHA-256, when Bitcoin first started out, if you were to run this on a machine's CPU, as I was doing when Bitcoin first came out, then yes, you'd be able to process a certain number a second. I think I probably earned rewards of, I don't know, 1.5 to 2,500 Bitcoins in the time I was doing it. Right back in the early days, just mining on CPU when there were very few people on the network doing it, kind of like thousands of people doing it on the network. It all made sense, people with CPUs doing it. But going back to it, SHA-256, it was actually designed as a cryptographic tool for verifying the integrity of things. So it's used as part of key exchanges and encryption and integrity checks, all that sort of business. It was a component of that. And of course, it was designed to be computationally efficient, so it could be done in a computationally efficient way, because you wanted it to be secure, but you only wanted it to be computationally difficult enough to be secure. That's a good algorithm design. So, yes, that has led to some unforeseen consequences that I'll go on to in a moment. The transaction halving, the Coinbase transaction halving that I talked about before, the rate at which coins are minted, so the amount that a miner gets for finding a magic number and being able to process a transaction, that halving, which occurs to reduce it over time, so there's a finite supply of coin that comes into existence. It halves very slowly. There's a long time between halving, years between halving. And then I think no one could have foreseen the consequence, which is Bitcoin's market capitalization, as in the total amount of value of Bitcoin in existence, compared against fiat currencies, becoming so absolutely enormous as you like. So, the price of a Bitcoin going from, tiny amounts up to silly amounts and bouncing up and down all over the place. No one, I think, could have seen that one coming. So these were some unforeseen consequences. So what am I ranting about? We haven't really got onto the rant yet. So, rant. The whole issue with SHA-256 being able to be done computationally efficiently, because Bitcoin became so valuable so quickly, what that meant is that firstly there was some innovation to, rather than run Bitcoin on CPUs, to be able to run them on graphics cards. As it turns out, graphics cards having lots and lots and lots of cores that can do very basic things could be, harnessed to do the SHA-256 calculation quite efficiently. Efficiency is good, right? You're able to do more calculations for less power consumption, or probably more power consumption, but the number of calculations per power consumption could be reduced. Here we go. Here's where we're getting into some dicky territory now. So great, people with graphics cards could use 200 watts instead of 100, but increase their rate of checks of these numbers manyfold. Did that help? Well, I guess it meant that people with graphics cards were now the only people who could do this mining on the network, and people with CPUs were kind of irrelevant now because their hashing power was so low, they became irrelevant. But I suppose not too big a deal. There's a lot of graphics cards out there, not as many as there are CPUs. So maybe you centralized the power somewhat, but people were buying graphics cards anyway, right? They wanted to play games. That's what graphics cards were predominantly for then. Then the value of Bitcoin continued to go up, and people identified FPGAs as a possible place to do these computations. Now, FPGAs are effectively circuits that can be programmed to do things a bit more efficiently, and can be reprogrammed in situ, and depending on the complexity of the FPGA. It could be something that can be reconfigured to do simple tasks or more complex tasks. Anyway, as we said, SHA-256 is quite a simple task. FPGAs started to appear on the market more for mining than for perhaps tasks they'd classically done that was more useful. That was a quite short-lived thing, because people suddenly realised they could actually just develop circuit boards, ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, ASICs, to do this exact task. They could literally design a board whose sole purpose was to do SHA-256. Doesn't seem like a terrible idea, and in fact, a board designed to do it will do it way more efficiently, in so much as you feed it the same amount of electricity, and you'll get phenomenally more out of it in terms of hash rate. So suddenly we've just entered into a world where we are building machines whose sole purpose is to run through random numbers to look for a particular random number to generate these magic beans. Doesn't seem terrible, does it? What ended up happening, of course, is that enormous amounts of R&D went into making these boards faster and faster and faster, more hashes, more hashes, more hashes, to the point at which we now have machines that consume 1.5 kilowatts of electricity. So compared to perhaps a processor of the era running at 50 to maybe 120, 150, around about the region of 100 watts processor, up to boxes consuming 10 to 15 times that to be a viable part of the network. And of course, yes, once you're generating hash rates in the thousands of billions a second kind of territory, everyone else has become irrelevant. CPUs aren't involved, GPUs aren't involved, FPGAs aren't involved. You're now, if you buy a Bitcoin making machine, you feed it electricity, you get magic beans out the other side. So there's my first rant. The fact that you've turned it into something that was originally designed as we want a good number of miners on the network so that no one entity can subvert the process, but there's no reason we need to be doing millions and billions and billions and billions of these tests a second at the cost of enormous gigawatts of electricity. That's not actually required, but that's where we find ourselves. So what was the unforeseen consequence? The unforeseen consequence was not Gordon Freeman in the test chamber. The unforeseen consequence was, whoops, we've now kind of semi-centralized this among dedicated hardware that is pissing away electricity to do it, when we don't need that many miners, and we certainly don't need to use that much electricity. Unforeseen consequences. Sorry, that was a mega ramble there. Why is it carrying on? Why hasn't someone done something about it in the world of Bitcoin? Well, I suppose the people with the mining machines, the people who make the mining machines, the people who now have lots of Bitcoin, no one really wants to rock the boat on any of this, because of course it could cause the value of Bitcoin to come crashing down. Any kind of uncertainty in any financial markets is never a good thing. Yes, the incentives are to keep everything the same, and in fact to continue this arms race and arms proliferation going as long as possible. That's not to say that other cryptocurrencies haven't taken slightly different approaches to it. My favourite of the cryptocurrencies, Monero, they have long had a policy of trying to keep ASICs off the network. And they have done this by changing their proof of work algorithm occasionally. They fork their project routinely to change the proof of work algorithm. The one they use at time of recording is one called RandomX, which has been designed from the ground up to be incredibly inefficient, which is such a funny thing to do with a cryptographic algorithm. But it's designed that it works best on a CPU. It takes what an ordinary PC has in terms of processing, memory, cache sizes, instruction set, and it's designed something in such a way as it's basically running a virtual processor on the processor that can only work efficiently if it's got all these things that an ordinary PC has got, making it effectively cost prohibitive to design an ASIC to do, because you'd basically be designing an ASIC that would be a general purpose computer. So, that's good. It again means that in principle you're spreading out the amount of hash rate across as many people as possible. There's no real way to hoard enormous amounts of hash rate and make loads of money. There's no real avenue for developing specific hardware. There's a downside, and the downside with a CPU only algorithm is botnets. So there's now a huge incentive for people to steal other people's computing power, to take over their computing power, to run these enormous anonymous botnets that through stolen computing power generate Monero. Again, the designers of Monero's latest algorithm, RandomX, have thought about that. The latest iteration of this algorithm, RandomX, requires quite a lot of RAM, so it's really difficult for a hijacked computer to go unnoticed. If you're running this, your computer is running incredibly slowly because all of your RAM is being eaten up and all of your processing time is being eaten up. So it's very much an opt-in thing. Anyway, I'm not here to sell the virtues of Monero. So yeah, RandomX is kind of a lesser of evils in the space of proof of work. So yeah, I'm not a fan of proof of work. I'd like to see other mechanisms exist that don't burn through enormous amounts of electricity to achieve the goal of securing the network. Other things have been proposed by various, projects. Proof of stake is the obvious one, which is whereby, you're eligible to process transactions if you have amounts of the currency, effectively meaning the more of the currency you've got, the more value you gain, and this kind of thing, which is kind of very similar to a traditional transactional currency, isn't it? But that's effectively what proof of work has become anyway, right? Because the people who are making the most are the people who afford to buy these boxes and house them in enormous facilities with huge amounts of cooling and power and so on. So, yeah. The rant. I think what I'd rather see is people being rewarded in cryptocurrencies or in any which way is relevant for doing useful work on a computer. Wouldn't it be nice if these computers that were idle or that were being bought to do this mining activity were actually doing useful work and getting paid for it? Disclaimer, I work for a company that's currently making such a thing. Anyway, so yeah, I don't like proof of work at all. I think it's terrible. Some implementations are better than others. The original plan was a great one, but the unforeseen consequences of using SHA-256 have meant it's just electricity piss away. People will defend it to the end of the earth because they stand to do well out of the fact that Bitcoin is doing what it's doing. It'd be lovely if things changed. Well, that was kind of my rant, really. I enjoyed ranting. I'm surprised that you actually sat through all of that and stayed to the end of it, but thank you for doing so. Well, I hope you found the video interesting and informative. If you have opinions about cryptocurrencies, proof of work algorithms, mining, please do feel free to comment below. I should be clear that I am very pro cryptocurrency. I think cryptocurrency is a great idea. I think a distributed network that anyone can participate in, no centralized control over transactions, a distributed ledger recording what the truths of who has currency are. All of this, I think, are great ideas. I'm especially fond of Monero, if you hadn't guessed, because it's a privacy coin, which means that baked into it, there's a lot of obfuscation about transactions. It makes it very difficult to follow the flow of money. It means that you can transact in a way that can be cryptographically proven, but is still private. Anyway, like I said before, I'm not here to sell Monero. So yeah, my personal opinion is that cryptocurrencies are great. Distributed ledger technology is great. Peer-to-peer networks are great. Yeah, comment below. I think I said that. Well, I think there's actually very little more for me to say at this point. There was very little for me to say at the start of this video, but I said it anyway. I hope you didn't mind too much the rather informal approach and unplanned nature of this video, the rambling and the ranting. If you'd like to see more like this, then do feel free to hit the like button. Don't hit the dislike button. Okay, fine, you can hit the dislike button if you want to. But yeah, that's about it. So until next time, guys, very little more for me to say, except... Kablah! God, I'm hungry.
I'm very sleepy. Very sleepy.